Cameron, I'm super excited to have you on this week's episode of the Silicon Valley podcast. I know you're the world traveler, and well, I'll let you tell our guest where you are currently if you'd like to. But before we even start and dive into the questions, can you give our audience a little bit of background of your career up until this point?
Sure. Well, I guess both of our backgrounds are similar. We both have a start going way back to Sligo in Ireland. So we got the little family history back to the same small little village in Ireland, which is really cool. I was groomed as an entrepreneur. I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. Both sets of grandparents were entrepreneurs. My dad ran his own company, and they groomed my brother and my sister and myself to all be entrepreneurs. We've all run our own companies to this day. So that was really my starting point, kind of growing up thinking that a job was a bad idea, a job was a bad deal. And being an entrepreneur was about having free time. So that's kind of was the genesis and the starting point. Ran my first business when I was 20 years old. I had 12 full-time employees. I ran a house painting business up in Canada, grew that business to quite a good size and ended up joining the head office of a group called College Pro Painters, which went on to become the largest residential house painting company on the planet. And I was hiring and training and coaching their franchisees back in the early 90s. So I coached 120 franchisees by 1993, one of which was Kimbal Musk. Elon's younger brother worked for me. And then his cousin, Peter Rive, who built Solar City, was also an employee of mine back in 1993. So I kind of got coaching some early stage successes. Nobody knew those guys back in the day, but I was a reference for Elon and Kimbal in their first round of funding for Zip2. It's why College Pro is mentioned in Elon's biography. So that was kind of my early stage entrepreneurial genesis. Left there and I was a partner in a collision repair chain, which we built out to become Gerber Auto Collision in the United States and Boyd Auto Body in Canada. It's now the largest collision repair chain in the world, publicly traded company. Exited there back in 1998 and joined my best friend, Brian. Actually, no, then I was hired as the president of a private currency company, similar to what Bitcoin is doing, but we did it back in the late 90s. Took that company public. We had 30,000 companies using our digital currency instead of the US dollar. We had like Starwood Hotels, Avis Rent-A-Car, Budget, Hard Rock Cafe, Bose Stereo, all trading using our digital currency. That company went public and I exited in October of 2000. And I joined my best friend, Brian, to become a garbage man because the stock market had crashed by 78%. I just joined Brian. I was going to coach him and grow his business. I was employee number 14 at a company called 1-800-GOT-JUNK. And I helped that company scale to 3,000 employees system-wide. Opened up in 4 countries. In fact, I saw a 1-800-GOT-JUNK truck here in Melbourne, Australia a couple of days ago. I was super excited. I helped them open here 20 years ago. Yeah, so I built that company up. We became a really well-known brand. I left there 17 years ago now, which is crazy. And then started coaching entrepreneurs and real companies globally. I started coaching a bunch of technology businesses. I coached the second in command at Sprint and the CEO at Sprint, Marcelo Claret, for 18 months. I coached a royal family in the Middle East. They own the country of Qatar. So I was coaching their group of businesses. I've written 6 books. I've been paid to speak in 29 countries and on every continent, including Antarctica. Well, that's a little bit of my weird story.
Cameron, quick question. Do you enjoy more coaching people or starting businesses?
I think I enjoy the coaching. I've done the operational thing for so long that I don't love the operations of the day-to-day because I find I get sucked into that vortex to the exclusion of everything else in my life. I run a company now called the COO Alliance. So I have a large network of second in commands globally. And I like running that business because I know it's serving all of these hundreds of entrepreneurs around the world. But yeah, I like coaching entrepreneurs. I like inspiring entrepreneurs. I see all these entrepreneurs like flies banging their head on the window and I kind of give them the shortcut, help them get out the door. I think I like that more, but it doesn't scale, right? So I just make great money coaching, but I think I've done my flag in the ground enough time with having built companies. I don't have to satiate that need anymore.
Okay, now when you're building these companies, and I'd done some research going up to this interview, you really like to plan a productive week, but you start planning Sunday night. Why Sunday night, and what is your method for that planning?
Yeah, so that started back in the College Pro Painters days. So when I was running College Pro, we had 8,000 students painting houses. We had 800 franchisees, and I was coaching the franchisees on how to be most productive, but they only had 17 weeks to run their business, right? We did $64 million in house painting between May 1st and August 31st. So we had to be operationally world-class. If we just kind of missed on a week, that was 6.5% of our year gone. So we became very tight on priority management. And priority management was a little bit kind of before time management starts, right? Priority management is thinking about all the stuff you have to get done. What are the big priorities, your big A's and your big B's, numbering all of your A's into the highest impact items, and then putting those A's into your calendar, and then putting your B's or delegating the B's so that you get all that stuff done by either delegating and growing people or making sure that you're working on the most impactful stuff. So Sunday became my planning day back in the late 80s when I was running my first company. And it just stuck with me that if I spend a half an hour thinking about my next week, planning all my priorities, putting them into my calendar and realizing I don't have enough time to do all the stuff I want to get done or need to get done, I have to now decide who am I going to delegate it to and when can I coach them and make sure that, leveraging situational leadership, they know how to do it. So it just became a system to be able to be very effective.
With that system, how were you able to delegate tasks and make sure they got completed without micromanaging?
Yeah. So it starts again by thinking with that end in mind, right? I know that I need to get to a certain result. And my core job is not to make sure that a job is done the way I want it done. My core job is to grow people, to grow their skills, their confidence, and their connections so that I can keep giving them more and bigger project stuff so that will I can get results through others. So by focusing on growing them and growing their skills, growing their confidence and growing their connections and delegating more, I was able to just grow the businesses really quickly. Instead of worrying about micromanaging and how a task got done, my real end result was growing the human so that they could always take on more capacity.
Was this mindset already back then at that painting company, or was this something that you developed over all these companies you've built?
It was because we had only 16 weeks to start and grow a company really, really quickly. So we didn't have time to do everything, right? I didn't have time to be that kind of radically self-reliant entrepreneur who's like, I'll just do it my way. I didn't have time to do it my way, right? Again, 1 week was 6% of my year. Consider 6 times 17 weeks is 102%, right? You kind of you don't have a lot of time to do it my way. And I also didn't like painting. So I didn't really want to pick up a paintbrush and scrape on a house. So I figured, how do I grow the business quick enough to be big enough to have enough gross margin to cover all my overhead so I make all the profit or enough profit without having to do the physical labor? So we just kind of reverse engineered that. In fact, even when I was coaching Kimbal Musk back in 1993, I remember he said he wanted to make $15,000 in profit. I said, what would your life be like if you made 20? He's like, wow, like 20 grand in profit back in 1993 was a lot of money. And so we just reverse engineered that. So that's kind of the way I approach it today, is just thinking about what do I really want to get done? My to-do list doesn't say Cameron's to-do list, right? It's just a bunch of stuff that needs to get done. So then I just decide who can I delegate it to. And if I'm like, I don't have anyone who can do this, doesn't matter. Who can I delegate it to and how can I grow them so they can do this? I think so often entrepreneurs get blocked saying, well, I don't have anybody I can delegate this to, so I'll do it. No, in fact, I have a podcast right now that's in the top 100 on Apple. It's called Second in Command. I now have a co-host who's interviewing a bunch of guests for me to test out how well the episodes will do if I have a really skilled host running those shows. So I don't even need to necessarily do all of the episodes, right? Delegate everything except genius.
Well, how come you're not having a Cameron AI person do the interviews then?
My avatar is not that good yet. I'm working with Delphi on my AI avatar. Have you ever done an avatar yet?
And not yet, but I've seen some of those one, and they're close. They're getting
close.
They're getting
they're close. They're not quite there because they keep kind of moving when I'm not saying anything. So it's like they have this little awkward movement. Mine blinks a lot, and I know that was a joking question, but my AR avatar is almost there. It's not ready yet.
Well, our follow-up interview, I'll give you the option of bringing in the AI or yourself for
I'm going to do an interview
there
with my AI avatar. I'm actually going to interview my AI self because it's trained with all 6 of my books and hundreds of my blogs and hundreds of my YouTube videos. So I'm actually going to do an interview of myself with guest questions. And I'm just going to play with it and see what it looks like to have both going on.
I think you got your 7th book right there.
My 7th book is coming out. I'm doing grandmother's tips for business. All the sayings that your grandmother and my grandmother gave us, right? Like, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Better a bird in hand than two in a bush. Keep your nose to the grindstone. I have 100 of these grandmotherisms. And then I've decided on how each grandmotherism applies to business in an entrepreneurial way. And then I had Midjourney create these really cool drawings of grandmother kind of illustrating the point. And so that book's coming out in about a month.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything you want to share with our audience now? A little sneak peek into the book? Because I did not know you had another book.
Basically it. Like, here's the thing. Our grandmothers, everybody who's listening, your grandmother was right. Right. When grandma said, as an example, like, don't put all your eggs in one basket. I was coaching an entrepreneur one day who was super, super excited that, and the company was called Media Temple. Remember Media Temple? They were the big hosting company, a big internet hosting company. I was coaching Damien Selforce, the CEO of Media Temple. They had about $120 million exit to GoDaddy 10 years ago. And he was really excited that 80% of the revenue came from WordPress. And I'm like, that's a lot of eggs in one basket. And he's like, what do you mean? And I said, well, remember grandma said, don't put all your eggs in one basket. If you trip and fall, you break all your eggs, you're screwed. You don't make any money selling eggs that day. You got to spread out your customer base a little bit. But they were getting 80% of their revenue from WordPress customers because of a relationship they'd built with the CEO of WordPress back in the early days. So just examples of thinking about your business that way.
I'd be still worried there. Cause I mean, if that relationship ends
it's too much.
Such a risk.
Yeah. So it's just thinking about how do we spread that out? Or it's a similar thing with if everything in your business relies on that one engineer who's the only one that knows the code, or you've got one person who's the only one that knows all the passwords. I remember back in the day, we had a franchisee at 1-800-GOT-JUNK. Sadly, he committed suicide. That was a tough one to turn around really quickly because all the eggs were proverbially in that one person's basket, right? He was the only one that really knew everything. And it took us a while to help the family and the general manager unwind that and make sure it was successful.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they don't teach you that one.
Yeah. That's crazy. Okay. Going back to, I'm kind of curious about your leadership style on that. When you're working with project management, how do you decide which of the many styles that you use?
So I follow a style of manager or leadership called situational leadership. It was developed by Paul Hersey, Dr. Paul Hersey, and Ken Blanchard. Ken wrote the book, The 1 Minute Manager. And it talks about adapting your leadership style based on the skills and the confidence of the person working on that particular project. So as an example, if I was coaching you on, like, what area of business would you be weaker in?
I'm going to say outreach, lead gen.
Okay, so sales outreach. Okay.
Yep.
So let's say if I was going to coach you on sales outreach, your skill set, if you were to give yourself a 0, 1, or a 2 on skills, what would you give yourself on skill set? No skills, some skills, or high skills?
Some skills.
Okay, so 1. So you're going to give yourself a 1. 0 for none, 1 for some, 2 for high. Now, what's your confidence on doing sales outreach? Not confident, a little shaky, or really confident?
A little shaky.
Okay.
A little shaky or kind of low. I'm really hesitant when it's a cold. Yeah.
So there's no half points. You got to go for a 0, 1, or 2 on confidence.
I'll go 1. I'll go 1.
Okay. So you're going to give yourself a 1 on confidence and a 1 on skill. That totals 2 potential points. If a person gets a total of 0 points, 0 skill and 0 confidence, I'm going to give the project to someone else. I'm not even going to bother coaching somebody who's not into it and sucks at it. If they have a total of 1 point, I'm going to micromanage them. It's exactly what they need. It's like a child pouring orange juice. They're really scared. They have no skills. I'm going to show them exactly what to do. I'm going to step by step, and I'm not going to explain why we do that project that way. I'm just going to tell them step by step exactly how to do it. If they have 2 points, I'm going to show them the plan, give them the step by step on how to do it, and explain why we do some of it to help them kind of understand it a little bit. If they have a total of 3 points, I'm going to get them to develop the plan. I'm going to be there to assist if they need help in making their plan. And I'm going to cheer them on and coach them and kind of praise them as they work through the plan. If they have a total of 4 points, I delegate the project and I don't even praise them. Right? Why would I bother praise? What's one of your superpowers in business?
Fine. I'd say building rapport.
Okay. So building rapport, right? So I'm not even going to praise you on building rapport because it would almost be patronizing to praise you on building rapport. When you're really good at it, you love doing it, you do it so naturally that it would come off patronizing. So in leadership, leaders have to adapt their style on a project by project basis, not by the person. If I manage you the same way on 10 different projects, sometimes I'm nailing it. Sometimes I'm micromanaging you. Sometimes I'm patronizing you. But if I situationally adapt my style, so that's my approach, is following the systems from situational leadership. It's actually the number one skill that the leadership team at Starbucks gets trained on every quarter.
Oh, that's interesting. So when they're looking to hire someone, are they looking to say, we only want 4s for these specific tasks, and then we will, if they're 3s, 2s, and 1s for other tasks, that's okay, but these are the few tasks that we want to make sure they're a 4 at when we hire them? Or
yes,
how does that look
when you're hiring somebody? I follow the systems from Top Grading and from Who by Jeff and Brad Smart. So you really are looking to hire somebody who has done what you need them to do already, not someone that knows how to do it, but someone that has done it before. And then for the most part, you're stacking up as much responsibility, as much of their core work on stuff they're really, really good at and they have the confidence to already do. As you continue to grow them and add more to their list, that's where you're going to situationally start to have to adapt your style a little bit. Where most entrepreneurial companies fail is they hire people that have got a lot of confidence, but not the skill to do the work, or they hire people that are a little bit shaky on both, and they're loading them up on stuff they're not really good at. They hire somebody they really like, but doesn't really have the skills, and then they're kind of micromanaging and having to oversee people all the time. It's mostly because they're not very good at interviewing. Most companies are very, very bad. Most companies have never been training their people on interviewing. Most entrepreneurs have never had any training on how to do a proper job interview. So they come in and they say, business is difficult. No, you're making business difficult because you have none of the leadership skills to actually run a company yet.
Let's talk about interview. How do you train someone to do a good interview? What are the any tips and tricks you can share for a good interview? I also would like you to share the torque.
The torque
sure. Reference.
Yeah. So the basics of interviewing, I actually cover it in my Invest in Your Leaders training. If you go to investinyourleaders.com, it's one of the core modules, as is the situational leadership model that I helped develop. So the basics on interviewing. Number one is to know what you're looking for when you're going into the interview. So understand what are the behavioral traits you're looking for that specific role. What are the skills that the person needs to do that specific role? And what are the core projects that person's going to be responsible for over the next 12 months for that specific role? Then it's to figure out what are the questions you need to ask to uncover a rating for each of those areas, right? How would you rate them on each of the behavioral preferences? How would you rate them on their skills? And how would you rate them on their ability to handle those projects? I like rating people on a bell curve of 1 through 5, with 40% of the people getting a 3 out of 5, 20% of the people getting a 2 or a 4 out of 5, and 10% of the people can get a 1 out of 5 or a 5 out of 5. So on that bell curve, if I'm looking for those core things, for them to progress to the next round of interviews, they have to get at least a 4 or a 5 on those areas. I'm not going to hire somebody in the middle. I'm going to keep working. So if you're a 4 or 5, you're in the top 30%. I don't want the 3s or the 2s or the 1. So that's the starting point, is know what you're looking for, having the questions to be able to identify it, and then getting some skill development around actually asking questions, using the pregnant pause, probing, looking for gaps in people's resumes, understanding how to ask questions that are a little bit deeper, looking for the different signals and body language that people give you, or their intonation changes in the interview, so that you know when they're kind of a little bit making stuff up or a little bit fluffing, where to probe even deeper. It's those kinds of things that happen. Most interviewers talk too much and they don't listen enough, right? God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. We need to use them a little bit more in that ratio. We need to listen twice as often as we speak. In the interview, the interviewer should be listening 85% of the time. On the torque side, so the torque is called the thread of reference check. So over the group interviews, over the video submissions the candidates are going to make, over the one-on-one interviews, I'm going to learn the names of different people that they work with, people they managed, people they reported to, people they had problems with at work. I'm going to draw out names of people. And at the end of the process, if I like this candidate enough to do it, a reference check, I'm going to say, hey, over the course of the interviews, you gave me the names of 8 people or 10 people. By Monday, I need you to come back to me with the email address and phone number for at least 8 of these 10 names. Your C players are going to run away and hide. You'll never hear from them again. Your B players will come back to you with 7 or 8 of the 10. Your A players will come back to you with all 10 names, all 10 emails, all 10 phone numbers, even for the ones of the people they hate or didn't like them. They don't care. Here it all is. And then torque is the threat of reference check. So I'm going to sit down and say, well, Sean, if I called Kelly, who you used to work with at XYZ company, what would Kelly say about you with this behavioral trait? When would Kelly say you're going to drive us crazy? Where would Kelly say that you're actually a little bit underqualified on these kind of core projects? Where would Kelly say you were exaggerating on your resume? And I'm going to talk to you about all the things that Kelly would say if I called her for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Then I'm going to go back to question number 1. I'm going to say, all right, Sean, what would Bob say if I called Bob? And I'm going to go through all the questions again for every single person that you talk to. I'm going to talk to you for 90 minutes under the threat of me calling these people to ask you what they would tell me. I actually don't even need to do reference checks. By the time that I've asked you what all 10 people are going to say about all those core areas, I've got you sweating. And the A players at the end of that process want the job more than they've ever wanted anything in life because they've been grilled. They know you're serious and they want to work with other A players. Your B players are a little bit nervous, but they still want in. And the C players halfway through want out the door.
But I mean, this interview process sounds pretty lengthy. Would this only be for executives, senior positions, or
No.
how far down in the company would it go?
This is where people have the adages and they don't follow them. This is what drives me crazy with entrepreneurial companies. People say slow to hire, quick to fire. And then they go, yeah, but this takes too long. Well, then there's your 7% growth. And that's why you have shitty employees. And that's why you have turnover. And that's why you have people quitting. And that's why you're hiring people that don't know how to do this stuff. You actually put in the work and you don't actually have to let somebody go. I was coaching a company called Blue Grace Logistics. I coached them for 4 years. They went on to raise $255 million from Warburg Pincus. You can read about it. It's in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, one of the biggest fulfillment companies in the US. And I coached them for 4 years. And when I was coaching them, Bobby, their CEO, one day said, I need about 90 days after I hire somebody to know if they're the right fit for the job. And I said, that's because you suck at interviewing. And he's like, all right, teach me. So I worked them through this method, taught their entire team, certified everybody on their team on how to do proper job interviews. Game changing. Because now the day that somebody starts, they absolutely know they can trust them. They absolutely know what to do. They know the blind spots. They don't have to wait any time at all to know if the person's going to fit. That's because they were slow to hire. But most companies don't want to do the work. They'd rather complain that business is difficult.
Oh, wow. Okay. So they implement this for every hire, no matter what the position was.
Yeah. It doesn't take that long to be careful to bring the right people into your organization. So here's an example of how I can help companies save money or save time on the interview process. We don't read the resumes. So what happens is I get hundreds of people to send me their resumes for a job posting. I write very polarizing, very magnetic job postings to attract people into the job. I put the compensation right at the top. I say 5 weeks paid vacation right at the top. We're attracting people to apply for the job. And then right away, we give them an auto reply. We go, thanks for your resume. I'm not going to read it yet. Please read this 5-page vivid vision of what our company looks like, acts like, and feels like in the future. Please read this recent article of us in the media. And then if you like the opportunity to work with us and you want to make our vision come true, send me a 2 to 3 minute video of what you're inspired by and how you can help us make our vivid vision come true. If we like your video, we'll bring you in for a group interview. So we look at the video submissions. If we like the video submissions, we bring them in for a group interview. In the group interview, we interview 6 to 8 candidates at the same time against each other. So now we can really see the vibe. We can really see the pulse. We can really see the cultural fit. We might bring 2 of the people from a group interview in for one-on-one interviews. That's when we look at the resume for the first time. Because right away, we're looking for the people that are vibrating with our energy. They want in, they know our vision, they know our culture. We know a little bit about them. We know their vibe. We know their behavioral traits. Now we'll see if they have the right skill set. Because actually now I have a smaller pool of the right candidates. Then I can interview for skill, and then I can use the reference checks. Most companies do this backwards, and they're like, oh, it takes too long to interview somebody properly, so we'll just fluff our way through it, and then we'll hire the person we like at the end. You're doing it backwards.
That's fascinating. You'd also mentioned something there, the vivid vision.
You know,
Can you
by the
talk a
way, it's
little bit
very,
about
it's very
that?
similar. It's very similar to the TV show The Bachelor, right? You get a girl on The Bachelor or a guy on The Bachelor looking at all the pretty girls, and they're basically group interviewing them all against each other. You can tell from a room of 30 girls who've got the right energy that you want to spend time with. And then you eliminate 25 and you're down to 5. Then you do the one-on-ones with them, and then you do more one-on-ones with them, you can eliminate. We do the very similar process in job interview process.
You think The Bachelor took their ideas from your interview process or vice versa?
No.
Going back, you'd mentioned vivid vision. Can you
Yeah,
dive a little bit deeper into what the vivid vision is?
sure. It's something that I got very well known for, but I learned it from an Olympic coach back in 1998. He was talking about how high performance athletes leverage vision to perform at the highest level in their sport. They will literally close their eyes and visualize themselves performing the sport over and over and over again, so that when they're performing, they almost can perform completely on instinct. And he gave us a challenge to find a company that, or a type of business that did that. And we found home builders do it very well. Home builders take the vision of the homeowner and they create the blueprints and the plans to make the homeowner's vision come true. And then they hand the vision and the blueprints to the employees, and the employees can build the home without ever talking to the homeowner. Or they can do the kitchen renovation without ever speaking to the homeowner. It's a perfect example of where vision meets planning meets execution. So we crafted a 5-page vision of what a company looks like, describing my company 3 years from now. So if I leaned out into the future and described my company December 31st, 2027, and I talk about what's sales operating like, and I just maybe have a paragraph about sales. What's marketing in my business like? What's operations like? What's IT? What's culture? What's my customer relationships? How are we leveraging metrics? What are our meeting rhythms like? What's our office environment like? How are we hybrid workforcing? What are my employees writing about me online? What's the media saying about me? I could literally come up with a 4 or 5-page description of what my company, the COO Alliance, looks like, acts like, and feels like in the future. Then I can give that vision to a copywriter who can polish it and make it pop off the page, or I can run it through ChatGPT and polish it and make it pop off the page, add some of my design elements so it feels like my brand. And then I share that 5-page document with all of my employees, potential employees, my customers, my suppliers, my business partners, my marketing agencies, so that everybody can see what the entrepreneur can see. Right now, they're inside my mind and they get the movie of what I'm trying to create. They can then come up with the plans to make that come true. So now no longer am I trying to hold people accountable and organize them. They all see where we're going. Their ideas are all in alignment with my ideas. That's the power of the vivid vision. I wrote a book on it. I wrote about it, Miracle Morning for Entrepreneurs. I wrote about it, Double Double. I've spoken about it all over the world. It's probably the core concept that I got very well known for in helping to align and inspire and grow companies.
How often do you revisit the vivid vision?
Every 3 years. Every 3 years, you're going to recraft your vivid vision. So I actually am in the final steps of rolling out my personal 2027 vivid vision for me. I've got some design elements that I wanted to change. So I'm a little late on getting it out the door because I'm already into February, but I have a 4-page document that describes Cameron as a human. I talked about me as a dad, me as a friend, me as a lover, me as a partner, me as a business person, me as a person in society, what I do for fun, what I do for fitness, what I do for travel and vacations and health. And I describe me, and then I'm sending that out to the world so they can help me become a better me. but I don't change it for 3 years. So when I'm coming up on kind of October or November of 2027, I'll rewrite my new vivid vision for me and I'll lean out to 2030. The same with your business. You lock and load everybody for that 3-year period. The only time you would ever change it in the middle of that 3-year period is if there's a global financial crisis or a pandemic, or you literally, your entire business model falls apart and you have to pivot from being an Uber to a pizza parlor. Then yeah, you're going to change your model a little bit.
Thinking back to the screening of the employees and the team there, I'm wondering, even with all that vetting, I'm sure that there's times in the workplace where there's some conflict. Can you share a time and how you successfully resolved a workplace conflict?
Yeah, I think I didn't even know this, but I think it's called nonviolent communication. There's a model for talking through conflict. I was taught it again back at College Pro Painters. It's interesting how College Pro was my real world MBA, right? I really did learn how to scale companies. So the model that I learned back then was I feel, I need, how do you feel? And you basically approach the conflict in that way. So let's say that someone does something that pisses me off. Maybe they're showing up late for meetings, constantly showing up late for meetings. You don't say you're always late for meetings, right? Because the person will go, nope, yesterday at the 3:00 meeting, I was on time. You say, yesterday morning at our leadership team meeting, when you showed up 15 minutes late, right? So I feel like you don't care about us. I feel like you're selfish. I feel like you're taking advantage of the team. I feel like you're unorganized. I feel frustrated with it. I need you to start showing up for meetings like you're an athlete showing up for the start of your Olympic event. If you're not 5 minutes early, you're late, right? I need you to remember that we're going to start on time. We're going to finish 5 minutes early so you can actually show up to your next thing on time. But I need you to tell yourself that the next time that you say, sorry, I'm late, what you're really saying is, F you, I'm disrespectful. I care more about me than I care about you. How do you feel about that? And right away, the person's like, yeah, I'm dead. Though I get it. I'm sorry. And they literally change, but it's because you're addressing the situation, not the person. You're addressing the specific, not generalizations. You're racing to the conflict. I'm saying, when this happened this morning or yesterday morning, it's not like 3 months ago you did this. They don't even fucking remember, right? So I kind of have that basic model. I even cover the conflict management model that I use in my Invest in Your Leaders training.
Do you want to talk a little bit more about the Invest in Leadership training? Please go ahead. But I'm also curious about meeting agendas, and running effective meetings. Because right now it seems like everyone's in more and more Zoom meetings all day long that just go forever.
Right. Well, the problem isn't that. So I wrote a book years ago called Meetings Suck, and the problem isn't that meetings suck; it's that we suck at running meetings. So I'll give an example. Sean, I'm sure you've had a little bit of experience playing baseball, right? You're not probably a AAA baseball player, but you've played baseball, right?
Played baseball growing up. Wish I was that AAA player though.
Right. But you played baseball. So somebody showed you how to hold the bat. They showed you how to swing the bat. They showed you how to catch a ball. They showed you how to throw a ball. In fact, before you went off to Little League, your dad probably practiced playing baseball with you so that when you went to baseball, you came home and you had a little bit of fun. But when Johnny comes home from baseball and says, Daddy, baseball sucks, it's like, no, Johnny, you suck at baseball. The problem with meetings is we've never trained our managers and our leadership team on how to run highly effective meetings. So about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe longer now, maybe 6 years ago, Elon Musk sent out a famous tweet and he said, if you're in a shitty meeting, stand up and leave the meeting. So I sent him a text message. I've known him for 30 years. I sent him a message. I'm like, no, don't tell people to leave shitty meetings. First principles would say, fix the meetings so that people are not in shitty meetings. Teach people how to run highly effective meetings. So in my book, Meetings Suck, I created a framework for running highly effective meetings. I'll give you the kind of core basics. Number one, every meeting has to have a clear purpose. Just why are we doing it? Number two, every meeting has to have an agenda. What are you covering? In what order are you going to cover it? And how many minutes are you going to spend on each agenda item? And then what communication style are you using for each of the agenda items? The info share, creative discussion, or is a decision being made? That's the starting point, purpose and agenda. If you don't have an agenda, allow people to say no agenda, no attenda. Like if you're asking me to come to a meeting and I can't see the purpose and agenda, I'm not saying yes to coming because I have no idea why I'd be coming for. Number 2, book every meeting for half the time you first think about booking it for. So if you're going to book an hour meeting, book it for 30 minutes, right? If you're going to book a 2-hour meeting, book it for an hour. An all-day offsite, book it for half a day. You'll be amazed at what you can get done in less time. It's like a quickie, right? We can get it done in less time if we need to. So book everything for a little bit. Parkinson's law says that work expands to fill the space and the time that we give it. Give your meetings a little bit smaller container. Next one is meetings have to start on time. But meetings, the reason people show up late is because everyone books everything back to back. So create a system internally that says we finish every meeting, we finish every phone call 5 minutes before the scheduled ending time, which allows people to go to the bathroom, walk down the hall, talk to their assistant, get a cup of coffee, check their email, and sit down exactly on time at the start of the phone call or meeting and say, all right, I know we're on for 8 o'clock, let's start. That's the kind of basic framework, right? You need to have a moderator, a parking lot, a timekeeper. So I teach that basic framework. And then I also teach that you only invite people to a meeting if you want them to contribute. If you don't want people contributing, don't invite them to a meeting, and give people the ability to opt out of meetings to say, you know what, I looked at the purpose and outcomes, I looked at the agenda. I don't think I need to be there for that. I'm good. You guys go with it. Just tell me what we decide. I'm going to sit at my desk and work through the core stuff that I need to focus on. I don't need to be involved. But so often leaders take that as a kind of a mark against them. Oh, Bobby doesn't want to come to my meeting. There's something wrong with me. No, Bobby's actually going to get some cool work done. He doesn't need to be in that meeting. And I think when you learn that, you can run much higher effective meetings. Where Steve Jobs was mostly misunderstood, he would walk into a meeting and be like, why the fuck are you here? He wasn't being rude. He in his mind quickly calculated, based on the purpose and agenda and outcomes of what we're covering, there's no need for you to be here. You should be working on X, Y, and Z. That's what we need you doing, right? He was like a computer allocating resource.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Understand agenda is everything there. What about, should there be daily meetings, daily huddles or not?
No, there should be meetings for specific purposes. So I like a daily huddle, right? A 7-minute all company stand-up meeting where everybody gets together and you share good news, you share the key metrics, you get a departmental update, you share any missing systems or frustrations, and then you break and go back to work. When a company gets to about 250 employees, those meetings tend to become more stratified and you base them more on business areas or business units because it's too hard to get 1,000 people coming to a daily huddle meeting. But a daily huddle has a specific purpose. You don't have a weekly meeting. You have a leadership team meeting, or you have a finance review meeting, or you have a business area review meeting, or you have so I created a set of meeting rhythms that are needed, and the style of meeting changes based on what we're covering in each meeting, right? A strategy meeting is run differently than a business area review. A business area review is run differently than a coaching meeting. But the problem is that most leaders don't know how to run meetings as a whole. And a meeting is anytime 2 or more people get together over Zoom or over a phone or in person to move something forward.
And I do have another question around a lot of our listeners, early stage companies, early stage startups. The role of a COO is not a role that people, graduate in that major or, it's where do they get the experience or the knowledge to go into that role or what advice do you have someone that's, the co-founder of a company or early employee and they just are kind of handed this is going to be your title, this is your task, this is, that situation.
So the COO tends to be the operational counterpart to the CEO, right? The visionary and the integrator, or there's the CEO and the COO. The COO tends to do all the stuff that the entrepreneur or the CEO sucks at. They tend to oversee all the stuff that the entrepreneur doesn't like to do. So they're the yin and yang match to the entrepreneur. It's a very different role because you're matching the CEO. So I'll give an example. When Harley Finkelstein, who is the COO of Shopify and Tobias Luque is the CEO of Shopify. Tobias oversees finance and engineering. Harley, the COO, oversees marketing and sales and business development and PR and culture. Harley's a very outward-facing COO. At a company called 1-800-GOT-JUNK, Eric is a very inward-facing COO. He oversees IT, he oversees engineering, he oversees finance. He's not a very outward-facing, rarely does he ever even speak to the media, kind of a COO. But it's because the style of the CEO that they're matching is different. That's what's very uniquely different about the COO role. But you have to be a second in command of an organization that's scaling. You have to be very good at the people side of the business, very good at collaboration, very good at communication, very good at planning, very good at cross-functional decision-making, very good at saying no artfully because you need to keep people focused on the right resources, very good at resource planning so that you understand the three inputs of people, time, and money, and how to get the highest ROI off of those. That tends to be the stuff that a COO or a second in command has to be really good at.
How does the CEO know they're doing a good job?
The COO's job is to make the CEO look good, right? Our job is to take stuff off their plate to allow them to work on their unique ability, the stuff they're operationally world class at. Our job is to shine the spotlight on them. The CEO's job is to shine the spotlight on the COO. So if you have a really good relationship, the CEO should be letting the COO know that they're doing well, but the COO should align themselves around roles and responsibilities and the core metrics so they can actually measure their success. And if they're setting themselves up for success, they know what they're responsible for, they know what they're being measured, and they can actually measure their own success on that. But the CEO should at least help shine the spotlight on them because they're often taking all the bad stuff, the hard stuff off the CEO's plate.
And Cameron, I'd love to give you some time. Can you talk about your leadership course, your new book? Can you talk about some things that our audience could benefit from?
Sure. So my leadership course is called Invest in Your Leaders. It was something that I finally came out with about 3 years ago after, being paid to speak almost 800 times to audiences in 29 countries. I realized I was leaving a lot on the table. And, entrepreneurs pay me $80,000 a year to coach them, right? For a 90-minute phone call once a month. There's a lot of companies that can't afford that. So I decided to package up the core skills that anybody who is running an entrepreneurial company needs, but they probably can't afford to bring in all the experts to train on this stuff. It's the core stuff around growing people. So my Invest in Your Leaders covers 12 core modules, and it covers the content on situational leadership, coaching, delegation, priority management and time management, project management, handling conflict, running interviews, running meetings, doing one-on-one coaching. It's all the soft skills of leading and growing people. And I just kind of created it in a way that the only way that someone's going to learn is if they realize they don't know something, right? They need to trip and fall or hurt themselves or make a mistake to be open to learning. So every module starts with a pre-test that anybody will fail. You're going to go through the test. You're not going to know the content. You're going to fail the test. Then it's me teaching the content over video. The content has some written information. When you go through that module, there's a post-test, which you'll pass. You'll get through it. You'll learned all the information. You get through the post-test. And after you complete all 12 modules, you get a LinkedIn certification badge that shows you've gone through the training. And I have companies right now that have 40 or 50 of their management team going through the content because they know that if they actually grow the skills and the confidence of their people, they can get way more done, right? Every early stage manager's problem tends to be, their answer to everything tends to be hire more people. And that's rarely the answer. So by giving them the skills, they can get more results through the people that they have. And then my book that you asked about is called The Second in Command. My newest book talks about unleashing the power of the COO and how do you actually recruit and hire and onboard and build that incredible relationship with that second in command, much like Brian had with me when we scaled 1-800-GOT-JUNK, is how do you build that kind of a relationship and unleash the power of that COO to really scale up the business and to free up your time as the leader so that you can work on the stuff that you're really good at and that gives you energy.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right, Cameron, we're going to have that information in the show notes. And
Awesome.
With that, for the audience, when I'm not the host of the Silicon Valley podcast, I'm an investment banker focused on mergers, acquisitions, growth capital. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And for everyone out there, please go to thesiliconvalleypodcast.com. Check out our archives where you'll see all our past interviews. and what we're working on in the future. And with that, Cameron, I want to thank you for taking time to be on this week's episode of the Silicon Valley Podcast.
Hey, Sean, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. That was fun.